Welcome to the new video of Neurophilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The silent withdrawal. There are relationships that do not end with shouting matches or betrayals. They do not collapse under the weight of lies, infidelity, or explosive confrontations. Instead, they crumble in silence, quietly, invisibly, almost politely. What destabilizes them is not aggression, but withdrawal. A simple choice: to step back, to no longer answer with the same eagerness, to no longer participate in the same rhythms, to reclaim space for one's own breathing. And yet, for the other person, this decision is not small. It can feel like an earthquake. There is a peculiar intensity in how some people respond to absence. They panic, they rage, they accuse. They do not merely feel sadness, they collapse. A space opens inside them that feels unbearable, as if something essential has been ripped away. But here is the paradox. Nothing was done to them. No harm was inflicted. No vows were broken. The only change was your choice to be silent, distant, autonomous. Why then does withdrawal provoke such disproportionate pain? The answer is rarely rational. It is psychic. The mind, especially a wounded one, does not relate to others as individuals but as symbols. In certain bonds, you are never truly you. You become what the other needs you to be: a projection, an archetype, an unconscious support system. Your role may be the nurturing mother, the protective father, the validating mirror, or the steady pillar that holds their chaos together. Carl Jung's work sheds light here. He explained that relationships often operate as theaters of projection, where unconscious archetypes are cast onto real people. In this theater, you are not yourself. You are the image that fits into the other's unfinished emotional story. And as long as you remain, as long as you keep playing the role, the illusion holds. But the moment you withdraw, the mask falls away. What collapses is not only the relationship, but the illusion of balance that you unknowingly sustained. To the one who depended on you, your silence is not simply silence. It is rejection. Your distance is not space. It is abandonment. Your autonomy is not a personal choice. It is betrayal. Why? Because you were not seen as a partner, an equal, a separate being. You were the ground on which they stood, the mirror that confirmed their worth, the emotional scaffolding that kept their inner chaos from overflowing. This is why your absence is experienced as catastrophe. You are not just leaving a relationship. You are taking away their psychic foundation. And without that foundation, their carefully managed balance collapses into anger, despair, and desperation. What appears then is not proof of love, but evidence of dependency. It is not the loss of you, the individual, that wounds them so deeply. It is the loss of the function you fulfilled, the role you unknowingly played in their unconscious architecture. And this, more than anything, is what makes silent withdrawal so powerful and so feared. Hi, archetypes and shadows. We rarely encounter another person as they are. More often, we meet our own unfinished story draped over their outline. That is projection. The psyche throws its inner images onto a living screen and calls the result love, trust, or destiny. Jung warned that what we fail to make conscious returns as fate, the unlived seeks a stage. Thus, the unmothered child longs for a maternal presence, the frightened self invents a protector, the unvalidated seeks a mirror that nods and never looks away. In this psychic theater, roles arrive before scripts. The other stands before you, and your unconscious hands them a costume. Perhaps you require the nurturer, endlessly receptive. Perhaps the hero, decisive, solving what you cannot yet face. Perhaps the priestess, whose quiet certainty makes chaos coherent. And when shame runs high, the shadow seeks a bearer. Disowned qualities, anger, envy, appetite, are hung like cloaks on available shoulders. Now the other is not a person. They are a function, a container for what cannot yet be owned. Archetypes themselves are not delusions. They are deep forms, old as myth, through which human experience takes shape. They help us recognize pattern and meaning. They become dangerous when we treat them as replacements for reality. The hungrier the need, the harder the casting. We stop listening and start assigning. We stop beholding and start using. Relationship thins into employment. One partner stabilizes, validates, redeems, or absorbs blame, while the other avoids meeting the contents of their own psyche. This is why a simple withdrawal can feel like sacrilege. When a role collapses, the story starves. The person who relied on your archetypal function loses more than comfort. They lose narrative continuity. The psyche hates blank pages. It will write in panic if necessary, accusations, catastrophes, judgments, anything to avoid admitting that the script was imaginary, that the character was never obliged to stay. What hurts is not merely your distance, but the revelation that the scaffolding was made of wish and need. Shadow work begins where projection ends. To reclaim what we placed on others, we turn toward what they were caring for us. The anger we condemned, was it ours? The longing for rescue, does it belong to the child still waiting by an old door? Individuation, Jung's path of becoming, requires this reversal of gaze, from you complete me to let me meet myself. It is a fierce tenderness to say, I will not make you my mother, my God, or my cage, and then to hold steady when the costumes tug to return. When two people meet without heavy costumes, something becomes possible. Love is a relation between sovereigns rather than a treaty between wounds. Boundaries are honored because there is a self to protect. Distance becomes breathable space. Silence becomes a rhythm of care. And if one person steps back, the world does not shatter because it no longer sits on their shoulders. Projections will try to return. Archetypes are patient. But each time you notice the costume in your hands and set it down, you stage a small revolution. You return people to their faces and yourself to your life. The fear of abandonment. If projection explains why some people collapse when you step away, attachment theory explains how this collapse takes shape. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, revealed that the earliest patterns of care leave enduring fingerprints on our nervous systems. We learn often before we can speak whether the world is safe, whether closeness can be trusted, and whether absence means temporary distance or permanent loss. For those who grow up in unstable bonds, caregivers who were unpredictable, neglectful, or inconsistent, the ground beneath relationships is never steady. Love becomes a mixture of tenderness and terror. Every moment of affection carries its shadow, the fear that it will vanish. This fear is not just emotional, it is physiological. The body itself goes on high alert. Separation feels like suffocation. Distance feels like death. This is the world of anxious attachment. Anxiously attached adults do not simply want closeness, they need it as if their survival depends on it. Their nervous system clings to the presence of the other as though it were oxygen. A message unanswered, a silence prolonged, or a shift in tone can ignite panic. The partner's presence is not just appreciated, it is essential to keep the anxiety at bay. In such a state, autonomy is misinterpreted as rejection, and individuality is seen as abandonment. Mary Ainsworth, Bowlby's collaborator, famously observed this in her strange situation experiments with infants. When a caregiver left the room, anxious children dissolved into chaos, crying, flailing, and struggling to hold themselves together. When the caregiver returned, the children did not simply calm, they clung and lashed out, desperate and resentful all at once. This paradox, needing closeness while fearing rejection, does not vanish with age. It only shifts into adult relationships, shaping love into a storm of urgency. When you become the attachment figure for such a person, you are not merely a partner, you are their regulator. Your predictability quiets their chaos. Your presence becomes their sedative. But this is not the soil of love. It is the soil of dependence. They do not relate to you as you are. They relate to the safety your presence provides. You are not just a companion, you are a lifeline. And so when you withdraw, even gently, the anxious attachment system ignites. Silence is interpreted as punishment, distance as betrayal, autonomy as cruelty. Panic surges, and with it comes a cascade of desperate strategies, pleading, manipulation, accusations, or emotional blackmail. To the anxious psyche, these reactions are not calculated. They are survival reflexes. The body believes it is being abandoned again, just as it was in childhood. Here lies the tragedy. Your decision to breathe freely, to reclaim space, is not received as your right, but as an attack. Their collapse is not truly about losing you. It is about losing the fragile scaffolding that kept their inner chaos contained. What they mourn is not who you are, but what you stabilized in them. And in this misalignment, love and fear become nearly indistinguishable. Forced birth and broken control. Margaret Mahler, the psychoanalyst who studied how infants separate from their mothers, offered a striking idea. Psychological birth is not the same as biological birth. A child can leave the womb, but still live in psychic fusion, unable to distinguish I from other. True birth happens slowly as the child realizes it is separate, autonomous, capable of existing on its own. Yet for many, this process is disrupted by trauma, neglect, or inconsistent care. They grow into adults who never fully emerge from the symbiotic bond. When such a person enters a relationship, they do not bond as individuals. They fuse. The partner is not simply a companion, but a continuation of the self, an emotional extension of their identity. In this state, your presence is not optional, it is oxygen. You are not just loved, you are needed to maintain the illusion that they are whole. This is why withdrawal becomes so devastating. When you step back, you are not merely leaving, you are forcing a kind of psychic birth. Mahler called this forced separation. The adult, still carrying the unintegrated dependency of the child, is suddenly torn from the illusion of unity. For them, your distance is not space, it is amputation. It feels like being ripped from the womb long after the time for natural separation has passed. In that moment, panic erupts. What they experience is not the sadness of loss, but the terror of disintegration. It is as if their identity begins to collapse without you there to hold the outline. This explains why their reactions often appear excessive. Pleading, anger, emotional blackmail, sudden hostility. They are not simply grieving a relationship, they are fighting for psychic survival. But there is another layer. Your withdrawal not only forces separation, it also shatters control. Symbiotic bonds operate with an unspoken pact. You will remain what I need you to be. When you disrupt this, by setting boundaries, asserting independence, or simply saying no, you break the invisible contract. And in doing so, you expose the illusion of ownership. The psyche that depended on you now lashes out, not only from pain, but from loss of power. This is why autonomy is often met with fury. It is not seen as your right, but as betrayal. The other interprets your individuality as cruelty, your silence as punishment, your freedom as abandonment. In truth, it is the crumbling of control that terrifies them most. Jung once wrote that, "Where love reigns, there is no will to power." But in these dynamics, power replaces love. Care morphs into manipulation, devotion into possession. Your role shifts from partner to prisoner, bound by the expectation that you will never deviate, never grow, never breathe without permission. To step away from such a bond is to commit a radical act. It is to declare that you are not a colony to be occupied, not a mirror to be gazed into, not a substitute for someone else's unfinished self. And though the other may respond with rage, despair, or desperate attempts to restore control, the truth remains. Your withdrawal is not an attack. It is a birth. Theirs, perhaps, if they choose to face it, but certainly yours. Freedom and individuation. There comes a moment when you must face one of the hardest truths about certain relationships. The collapse of the other person is not proof of how deeply they loved you. It is proof of how deeply they depended on you. What you thought was affection may have been survival. What looked like devotion may have been fear. And when you step away, what surfaces is not the loss of love, but the exposure of an unhealed void. This is why freedom in such relationships is often drowned in guilt. The guilt is insidious because it wears the mask of compassion. You see the other suffer, you hear the accusations. You're selfish, you're cruel, you abandoned me. And part of you wonders if they are right. But this guilt is not born of truth. It is born of projection. Their pain is real, but its roots are older than you. It began long before you entered their life, long before you became their symbol, their anchor, their mirror. You are not the cause. You are the screen onto which the drama is projected. Carl Jung's vision of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires breaking these projections. It requires stepping out of roles and refusing to be the archetype someone else insists upon. This is never comfortable. It means disappointing those who built their stability on your presence. It means being accused of coldness when you are simply setting boundaries. It means losing the illusion of harmony in order to gain something far more important: integrity. True love does not suffocate. It does not demand possession or continuity at all costs. True love respects cycles, honors distance, and allows both people to breathe as individuals. Dependency, on the other hand, screams when you grow, manipulates when you pull away, and condemns you when you choose yourself. To mistake dependency for love is to accept a prison disguised as intimacy. Choosing freedom in this context is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. It is the recognition that no bond can be healthy if it requires you to erase yourself to sustain it. Your withdrawal may trigger collapse, but that collapse is also a mirror for the other, a painful chance for them to confront their emptiness, to finally see the parts of themselves they refuse to face. Whether they rise to that challenge is not your burden. Individuation always carries a price. The price is guilt, rejection, and the fury of those who preferred the illusion. But the reward is wholeness. When you stop functioning as another's emotional crutch, you reclaim your right to exist as yourself, unmasked, unborrowed, unowned. And when you encounter others from this place, the dynamic shifts. No longer a mirror or a pedestal, you meet as two beings who see and are seen. The journey is not easy, but it is necessary. Because in the end, the ties that cannot survive your truth were never love. They were contracts of survival, and contracts can be broken. What endures is something greater: the freedom to stand whole, to breathe without permission, and to live as the person you were always meant to be.